Hello, and welcome to Open Education Analytics. My name is Chad. Today I'm going to give an overview of the OEA module tied to the Microsoft Graph Reports API. Let's go ahead and get started. So for this short overview, I'm going to focus on two pieces. One is a tour of the OEA GitHub repo module assets. So the individual pieces are listed here. Towards the end, though, I'll also point out a few interesting resources that are worthwhile when applying this to your own environment. Let's dive on in. So I'm going to navigate over to the OEA GitHub repo, right? So Open Education Analytics. And an overview of everything OEA is here on this landing page. So I'll let you read that if you haven't already. I recommend it. We're going to focus, though, on the modules portion. And OEA modules are basically data sources that you can set up for your own environment. And we give a bunch of assets here that make that setup super fast and easy. We'll look at the Microsoft data directory, and under that, there's the Microsoft Graph resources. For the Graph Reports API module, there's a lot of different assets, which I'll point out here in a second, ranging from documentation to code to dashboards. The place to start, though, I think, is an overview of what Graph Reports API does. And Microsoft Graph is quite large. There's a lot of data pieces that you can pull from your O365 application account. For us, though, in the education sort of scenario, we're focused on looking at data from tools usage. So think of Microsoft Teams app usage. Things like this you can monitor from either a teacher's point of view or from maybe an administrator's point of view. For this module, we just look at a small portion of Microsoft Graph, how often Teams is being used and how many people are in various meetings. The data sources are basically a couple of Graph Reports APIs that we call, and I'll sort of show those details here in a second. For the module setup, there's a bunch of steps here, which I'll show the details of briefly. And there's a bunch of assets that are provided, right? The thing I'll focus on for today is the tutorial. So how do you actually set up the Graph API module and get started? But once you set it up in, say, a sandbox environment, you can look at the individual code for the pipeline and modify it yourself. You can play with our sample data sets. You can also play with some of the functions that we provide as well. There's even a Power BI template that you can download just to verify that the data is coming in, and you can look at it. There's a few other resources here which I'll actually point towards the end. So I'll let you read all those details yourself. But the place to begin, I think, is really after you read that first page, the setup tutorial, which is this PDF document here. And these are all the individual steps you need to get this set up in your own environment, right? So the main steps are here. It's mostly initializing all that you need to get ready, and then bringing the data into your environment using a Synapse pipeline, right? So I won't read through all these details, but it's a step-by-step process to get you going. Once you set up everything in this documentation here, so in this tutorial, which I already did in a test environment here, you should see the following sort of data and results. So let's have a quick look. This is the Synapse landing page, right? So all the regular things. On the navigation pane off to the side, I'm going to focus on the data tab because I already set up this module pipeline. I followed all those instructions, and I'm starting to see data from the Graph API here in my stage 1 data lake. So if I focus on this and I click that directory, we're actually pulling 3 Microsoft Graph reports, right? So the M365 app user detail, Teams activity, and user information as well. And if I go into any of these, I can see the raw JSONs that are landed in this lake. So these are all JSON files which come straight from the Graph Reports API queries. So these are the data landing in its raw form. In the provided pipeline, we actually process this to queryable data, right? So that's in stage 2. So I'm going to jump to that piece. And I can see that pipeline that I ran gave me a Graph API folder. And inside that, I see the same 3 reports. The only difference now is these reports are changed in terms of format. So they're no longer in JSON format. They're in Delta format, and everything is located in a Parquet file, right? So this is the standardized tabular format of the OEA framework. If I want to look at any of these in detail, I can query any of these reports just straight from this Data Explorer. And here I think I queried the first one. So if I jump to the SQL script, which I already ran, let's get you out of the way. I can see the first few lines of the M365 app user detail data, right? So this is sort of the results that I can start to use. Again, like I mentioned, all of this is provided through a pipeline. And this pipeline is the Graph API module pipeline. All of this is provided in the tutorial automatically, right? So I'll let you go through those details and you get started for yourself. That's my brief tour of the OEA GitHub repo assets, right? So everything Microsoft Graph, this landing page tells a lot of details. There's really a lot to Microsoft Graph, though, aside from the few reports I just showed. It's very rich. There's a lot of documentation you can read, so clicking any of these links provided, the one on that image, and also these links down here, you can read a lot of details of what Microsoft Graph can do. So I recommend browsing this and trying to figure out which of these queries fit best for your situation, right, that you're working on. Also, once you want to explore queries, there's a resource called Microsoft Graph Explorer. So on this page, when I log in using my work account, I can actually search through sample queries and run them. So here, if I just run this first one that I see, so it's get profile, it actually runs this query on my Microsoft O365 account and provides any information that might be there. So this is a good way to explore the individual queries and get a feeling for what the format looks like. And like I mentioned, there's really quite a lot to explore. We were focusing mostly on the Microsoft Teams data as a start, but there's many more to consider. Last, the Graph API is a good source for everything Graph. All of these queries, there's a lot to search and a lot to explore. There's another resource, though, that we didn't use in this module, which is called Microsoft Graph Data Connect. This is a good resource worth exploring. It's really relatively new, so it just came out. It's a seamless way to integrate this into a Synapse environment that scales pretty well, right? So it's a little bit more flexible in some ways than querying the API reports directly. Well, that's all I have for my brief overview of the Graph Reports API module. To recap what we covered here briefly, I gave a tour of the OEA GitHub repo, including location of the problem statement and impacts of this module. I pointed out a few data sources and module assets that you can take advantage of. I also pointed out the main Graph resources that you should explore. One is Graph Explorer, which is a really good way to explore the API queries and get a feeling for the data. But Data Connect is in some ways easy to use and more scalable, but limited in some ways as well. So there you have it. I hope you enjoy exploring Graph API.